Welcome to Leadership Bites with myself, your host, Guy Bloom. This is a leadership podcast where I have conversations with colleagues, I chat with guests, and sometimes there'll be just me talking. You can connect with me at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and please tell everyone. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
Good. Just wanted to get us together for this topic. This next one is what I've been reading about, these tech layoffs. It's been quite considerable and they've been going on now for some time. And I'm just looking at a little note here that says Amazon 18,000, Alphabet 12,000, Meta 11,000, Microsoft 10,000. The list continues.
Yeah, and the numbers are not small.
And they're not small. Probably is happenstance, but Elon Musk goes into Twitter, gets rid of 75% of the workforce, and everybody says the whole thing will fall to pieces. And a month or so later, he goes, record numbers and we're still going. So it does feel as if the rest of the industry looked at that and said, I wonder if that should be the same for us. I'm sure that was just, the unfortunate alignment of behaviours. But what it sort of led to is a video that went relatively viral of a lady. There's an element of play in it, but at the same time, I think it was very, very true. She was asked, you've been recently laid off, how do you feel? She said, well, not good. And then she moved on to this idea of working in organisations where this whole family idea, and we're just doing everything for you, and, be committed, commit yourself to us because we're committing ourselves to you. And then she says this fantastic phrase, which I've written down, which is, you didn't adopt me, you hired me. And I thought that was super powerful. And we just listened to the clip, the two of us, a few minutes ago. And that really resonated with me because actually, if I was family, you wouldn't treat me like this. I wouldn't be an engineer that gets an email and I'd just be locked out of my system. I've been working with you for 15 years and I don't even get a conversation. So actually, I wonder what this is doing, and this is the real crux of maybe this little chat. I wonder what these layoffs are doing to the truth behind we'll look after you. Join not just a culture, but join a family, join a tribe. The Sebastian Junger thing got adopted for this word tribe and become part of something, but actually only when it suits you. So we often talk about trust, but I wonder what this is doing and the danger this is to people trying to recruit, going, hey, join the family. And actually, it's a facade. And I wonder just what we think about that, because I think I've got a little bit of an instinct towards it, but there's our catalyst for the session.
You're getting to the heart of a couple of issues, aren't you, straight away? What is kind of what's the nature of the employment contract? What's the deal? If I say, Guy, will you come and work for me, please? You rightly would ask, so what's the deal? And that would fairly quickly get to money, but it's more than that, because if you think about it, we give the best years of our life and the best hours of each day to our employer. And if all we get is money, it's got to be a lot, because I'm going to sacrifice an awful lot to give you the best days, the best years, the best hours of each day, etc., and all of that time away from my family. Not surprisingly, what we receive is called compensation, because that's what we're compensating people for, is giving up, in a sense, their life to not pursue their own goals, but mine. I'd be employing you to pursue my goals. and to the extent that I can recruit you into that vision, they might start out being your goals as well. They might become your goals over time. But ultimately, if the business is owned by me, or I speak for those who do own it, the employment deal is not just about the conditions under which I'm going to recruit you, but also what's the deal, what's the ongoing deal. And so an intelligent man like you would need me to say things like, well, you have access to interesting work. You'll be able to pursue goals which you will find meaningful. You'll be able to take real satisfaction in the impact that you're making. All of those would be meat and drink to you. They'd be music to your ears, because that's how you want to live your professional life. And most people are in that position too. It isn't, I think, a huge number of people who just want to pitch up, churn out the widgets and go home at night. Most people want rather more from their employment than that. And I think therefore what the video and the Indian lady in the video was really saying is the employment contract has been broken. It's not the written contract that's been broken, it's the psychological contract that's been broken. And the old version of it used to be, I will get you to do exactly what I want. I'm not interested in your opinions, you do as you're told. But it's the iron rice bowl. You've got a job for life, pretty much. Join an old style business, and that was kind of the way it was. And so when people who were recruited under that kind of cultural ethos in business then were fired, they really felt the world had changed the rules on them. And that was kind of completely unacceptable. But now it's even more explicit. We use a different language to talk about employment. We talk about family, we talk about mission, and we talk about vision, and we talk about things being meaningful, and we're interested in your opinions. And the whole employment contract has changed. So if I then treat you like just a human resource, which can be disposed of as well as it can be acquired, the employment contract feels to have been broken, and it feels as if there's been something really very fundamental that's been lied about and has now come home to roost.
Yeah, I was going to use the word subterfuge there. For whatever reason, it jumped into my mind. And I think most people are okay. I've got a couple of people I know that are doctors that say the first thing when you have to give bad news is you're trained just to give the bad news. As in, don't dress it up, don't wrap it up. Yep. Actually, what you do learn is people are very good at dealing with the truth. There might be a few people that struggle with it more than some, but actually, don't give people hope, don't make something up. They will have to find their own path to dealing with that truth. And you learn that very quickly. And that makes sense. And actually, if you said, join this organisation, and as much as possible, we'll try and develop you, you'll have as much autonomy as we can give you, we'll pay you this. However, let's be clear, we live in a very commercial environment, there are ebbs and flows, blah, blah, blah. There's no promises here of future career outside of, while we can, we will. And I think that is almost truth that probably people don't want to verbalise, but I think the world is starting to really recognise. I think people are getting a sense of, it's not that it's smoke and mirrors, but there is a phrase, your actions make a liar of you. And that would just mean that if you're going to keep a standard recruitment HR cultural position, if you're going to keep the belief system of joining the family, joining the tribe, actually, but when redundancies come or whatever it is, we're out the door. And actually, I'm a Google engineer. I've worked here for 15 years and all I got was an email. I didn't even get somebody going, hey, have you got a minute for a phone call or a Zoom or whatever? You didn't even do me the honour of getting me on a Zoom meeting with 10 other people and looking us metaphorically in the whites of the eye. You sent me an email. I went to log on. I couldn't even get into my laptop that day. You cut me off. And that's more than just preparation for an enormous event. That's actually a shock. That's into a bereavement. I'm connected to my people. So you're actually not just making a commercial decision. There's then no humanity in it. And that then creates, I think, this issue with people starting to go, what's really going on here?
I'm a person before I'm an employee. And I'd like to be treated as a person with my own rights, talents, frustrations, joys, sadnesses. But as a person, please treat me as a person. And incidentally, as a consultant for decades, I often had to advise people about how to make somebody redundant. And the challenge that I always set everybody was, how can you make someone redundant well? Not effectively. I mean, you can send them an email, send them their P60. That's effective, but it's not doing it well. And if I recruit you in the belief that, Guy, I'd really like you to come and work with me, and we will listen to your opinions, and we'll do our level best to treat you well, you'd expect that to extend to when we can no longer employ you at all. And losing people well is the challenge. And I think what it means is you have to talk to somebody, not just send them something. Ideally, you need to do it face to face. And if you can't, then you need to do it through a medium like we're using now. But find some way of actually talking to this human being who just yesterday was a prized and treasured employee, a colleague. And how do you do that well? Well, as you say, you have to level with them right from the start. Guy, fairly quickly you have to say, Guy, I'm here to tell you that there's no longer a job for you here. And from that point on, the whole conversation is about how can we help. This is the deal. This is the redundancy deal. With many executives and even relatively medium level people, if the numbers are not too huge, many organizations will try to offer redundancy counseling or help in finding another job, or a really positive reference. There's all sorts of things that employers can do to try and ease that transition, but it starts with, please treat me as me, not just as employee number 5451. So that's a challenge I think that we need to be able to accept. I've got to treat people well, even when I'm parting company with them.
No, I buy into that 100%. I also get this sense that these numbers are quite significant and they hit the news, but there's also something about when I go to employ again, when the handle turns or the wheel turns and I go to kind of rotate the handle to then recruit people in, there's now, according to these numbers, 20, 30, 40,000 people from probably, even though it's a lot of people, it's probably those people I'm going to, we'd like you to come back, all the way through to getting somebody else in from one of these other places and spaces.
You're fishing in the same pool.
You are fishing in the same pool, that's right. And I have a sense that we've then got people who are damaged by the experience that they've had. So when you go
who don't trust you, they don't trust you at all.
Well, it's not us that did it to you. Yeah, but you all did it. And it kind of moves from a sense of, because it's not just one company, and this seems to be much more across the board, this is where you see, I think, people getting damaged with their ability to trust again. It's like coming out of a relationship, isn't it? It's not that I can't trust again, but that was pretty horrendous. If I was engaged for 10 years and then I turned up and the person had thrown me out the house, changed the locks, and I couldn't even get in, right? I might be a bit damaged by that and might want a prenup next time. First marriage I went into, didn't have a prenup. Second one, I think I need a prenup. Why? Well, I got so badly damaged by the first one. But I'm different. Yeah, you say that. and I wonder if that's a similar thing, and this is what I think it kind of feels like.
It's a once bitten, twice shy, you say. So, and I think that it's interesting, these sort of aphorisms, these sayings that come to mind, because, of course, it must be a common experience for people to have come up with the saying that's sort of caught on and everyone uses it. So once bitten, twice shy, I think is about right. But there are two anchors that I reckon hold organisations together and hold them in place. One is purpose. Why does this organisation exist? What is it that we're trying to do? And the other is values. What are the kind of values that we espouse and which we use as guiding principles for our actions day to day? And ideally, they ought to be relatively invariant. They ought to go through time. Now, the purpose an organisation serves can change hugely. So when IBM stopped making business machines and became a consulting company, their purpose changed. When Menzies, stopped being a newsagents in Edinburgh and became an aircraft handling company worldwide, not surprisingly, their purpose changed, and it morphed several times in the 120 odd years that organisation's existed, morphed several times en route to that. But the point is that the purpose doesn't change very often. If you're a supermarket group, you exist to retail food at reasonable prices on the high street. That's the sort of purpose that you serve. And if you've got values that you espouse, and if you don't practice them, you create cynicism. Now, I think these two things have multiple roles. Purpose, it seems to me that when Musk took over Twitter, what he realised is that the core purpose of Twitter didn't need so many people to serve it. It's when you start to get distracted with all sorts of other purposes that you start to increase the numbers of people on your payroll. So that when people criticise the NHS for coming up with, a director of lived experience, which is a wonderful tautological term. How can experience be anything other than lived? But when they look at that, they think, wait a minute, that's not cool. Why on earth are they doing that? Now there might be a reason for it, but the point is that it's not at first sight obvious. And when organisations lose sight of their purpose, they sometimes need to get brought back to it in a rather sort of dramatic way. And it's always sensible whenever you're starting to depart from it a bit. Someone ought to always be challenging. Is that really what we do? But the other thing is that if you come back to that core purpose, you might well find that you can run a slimmer, lighter workforce, smaller workforce. But the other thing is that if people have bought into the purpose of the organisation, they feel doubly bereaved if they can't serve it anymore. So if you worked for Walmart in the States and have bought into their initial vision of making it possible for poorer folks to buy what richer folks can buy, and therefore the whole mission of the organisation was to drive down costs and therefore drive down prices. If you've bought into that and then suddenly you get made redundant, you think, well, how on earth am I going to serve that purpose which I've really bought into big time? And that therefore gets you to the values. You only really know what an organisation's values are in the tough times.
Bingo. Yeah. And I think that's a massive point. And I agree with you with purpose. I agree with you with values, and I do a lot of work with organisations around that. What I also have another phrase here, which is another word here, which is community. And you call it community, call it team, but community is an interesting one because I sometimes use the word tribe as well from the Sebastian Junger work. And I look at it and I go, actually, you have to be very careful, because if you're going to use these words, if you're going to say values, if you're going to say purpose, if you drift from your purpose, people will know. If you don't hold to your values, people will know. And as you say, I do note it's very different now. This is a very specific situation. Well, actually, it's not a specific situation. It's just a flow and a set of contexts. And this is the one you're going to be judged on. All the others, it's easy when it's easy. When the money's flowing in, etc., it's easy. So actually, this isn't different. It might be harder, you might be panicking, you might be concerned, but this is the one where the memories and the narrative are going to be formed. And it's not just the community within the business, it's the community outside of the business that has a kind of conscious memory. And these things don't, particularly with social media, it might be back in the day, pre-internet, only those that knew. Well, now everybody knows, and it enters the consciousness. This stuff doesn't get forgotten. It does come around. It does stay. There are going to be people talking about this for a considerable amount of time. And I think maybe when the world turns, it'd be very interesting to see the commentary about, they're hiring again. However, will I give myself as much? And one other thing, I'd just like your thoughts on this. I have noticed there was a spate of videos, and it's the curse of social media, where people were going into the workplace, and we spoke about this before, I think, and showing my day at work, my day at a day in the life of me at Google or at Meta or at Twitter. And it was cappuccinos and doing some yoga. Then I've got my first session, and now I'm going to go on the roof deck and I'm going to just, have a meeting up here. And somebody was like, when the hell does this person work? And I think Elon Musk was commenting, jumping in on people's Twitters and going, before he bought it, going, so what actually is your job? And I do wonder, give an inch, people take a mile. When people maybe lose their purpose, they're not connected to the values. They've got a job, but they've joined a community under the understanding that it's all about them having a good time and about total work-life balance, which I get. But there's almost a kind of, at what point didn't you think that would bite you in the arse? At what point didn't you think putting that out there that you're not grinding? But actually, is that the culture that they think they're in, where actually, oh no, we don't really grind here, we've got this perfect balance? I wonder if this is a bit of a reset for saying, when we're hiring people back in, we'll be hiring because there is an actual job, it's got defined purpose, and actually we have an expectation about what work is, because actually people stretch it to the point where it causes this kind of...
You raise lots of points. One that comes to mind, which is not at first sight obvious, is that it's about the connotations of the words we use. Back at school, my English teacher told me that verbs were doing words, and of course job descriptions are often full of things that we want people to do. But it's the nouns, I think, that often get us into trouble. So if we say family, it has connotations. Oh, family. Well, you can't fire Uncle Bert. So does that mean I've got a job for life then? Uh, you know, you can't have occasions to which I'm not invited because, like guests at a wedding, if you invite Auntie Flo, you've got to have, Uncle Bill as well. The connotations, a community. Community, okay. So community, commune, together. I'd expect a certain measure of equality here. And when I discover that the chief executive earns not just 4 times as much as me, but 400 times as much as me, I think, ooh, this doesn't feel much like a community. It's the connotations need to be thought about quite carefully. And it feels to me that the old language of things like colleague is actually quite useful. Collaboration. It had a unfortunate connotation in the Second World War, collaboration, but today collaboration means someone I work with. A colleague is someone I work with, and it has a connotation also, if you're a rather sort of positive thinker anyway, someone I value working with, and so on. And I'd expect that to be manifest in the way I'm treated day to day. But don't use words that you don't mean. So family probably doesn't work. The language is important. I think the other thing is that if you think about the conditions under which someone's prepared to work for somebody else, whatever the employer says in that recruitment and hiring process does not necessarily translate straight into what the employee hears or believes. And it seems to me that when you join a new company, it's almost as if you're doing it with the organisation on probation. I mean, the employee is often regarded as having a probation period, but so does the employer. So I'm thinking, okay, so you've said that we like to involve people whose thinking is different. Okay, mine's different. Let's just see if you welcome that. And I'll try a few things and I'll see how you respond. And so I will adjust my behaviour. Because it feels to me as if the employment contract that actually is in place is the psychological one. The legal one is almost a detail. The really important one is the psychological one, and it gets formed over time. It doesn't happen on day one.
Guessing, as I kind of conclude my thoughts on it, business has its need, has its cycles, the market has its cycles. That's the stuff of life. Maybe there's just something here that we maybe look back, maybe like fashion trends. You go, yes, I remember those when I was a kid. And so we see...
I remember trousers that had bell bottoms.
Exactly. So you see the cycles, you're not surprised by it. And maybe that's what it is. To a point, there are certain people that don't see the cycles because they've not had the experience before. But people in senior roles, maybe also, if you are in that senior level, maybe there is something about looking at the vocabulary, looking at the way we go to the world, and being careful about what we espouse and the vocabulary that we use. And when we say tribe and community and family here, then let's be very careful, because actually, I think you're right. Words have power. And if you say you like me, that's not the same as telling me that you love me. Being a colleague is one thing, but actually being a colleague that collaborates and we have purpose, so we're connected.
Who we trust and who we respect and who we value. These are other words that, that people expect to be associated with words like colleague.
Yeah. And maybe there's just something there about not allowing, not so much the marketing department, but not allowing the desire to be, maybe it's operating at a level that doesn't quite yet exist in the world, to get in the way of what your real day job is and what it is that actually would be more honest and more genuine and more trustworthy with people. And maybe that's the stepping stone for the future. As people look, as the handle turns and people start to bring people back in, if you start using these words, I wonder if they'll turn people off if you're saying, welcome to, it's about us being a family. It's about us being a tribe. And people are going, yeah, hold on, I've just had that experience and that didn't work out. So I'd like the job, but I don't know if I'm going to buy into the rest. But if you say, listen, we're going to use the word colleagues and collaboration and connection, and we're going to talk about trust and value, But understand, we're also going to use another word beginning with C, commercial. We are a very commercial environment. Actually, maybe I'll trust that more because it's just real and it's just honest, and maybe that's just what it is.
It's about trying to manage expectations, and not to try and sell people on a false prospectus here. So is it too much to ask an employer to mean what they say and say what they mean? So choose your language carefully. Choose the language that you can be authentic around, because that actually enhances trust. People trust other people, not necessarily that they're nice to them all the time, but rather that they are consistent. That's one of the key ingredients of trust. Consistency. Do you mean what you say? Do you say what you mean? And can I see it when I come into the office every day? That's a good basis of trust. And if you are a really tough taskmaster, okay, but are you that for everybody, and are you like that all the time? If so, in a sense, I can kind of trust that. I understand that. Warren Bennis, he's dead now, but he was a wonderful organisation researcher, and he published a book way back in the 80s called Leaders, the Strategies for Taking Charge. And he talked about the 4 things that all the leaders, the 90 leaders that they researched, they all did. And one of the things that they all did was to create what they called a community of trust and a community of meaning. And that is the phrase that rings in my memory is the leaders were not all necessarily liked, but they were all trusted. And that measure of consistency is really rather important, and therefore authenticity, the language you use, and so on, all matters. But this topic takes me to a very fundamental point psychologically. I'm a psychologist, and one of the things that Freud said was that people have 2 fundamental drives and motives. One is to love, and the other is to work. And in my book, Work Life Matters, the second chapter is called Work Matters. If people lose their jobs, they sometimes lose their marbles. They often lose their health. When they retire, many people struggle to retire because not only does the schedule of each day go out the window, but their meaning for each day goes out of the window. Work matters, and we have to treat colleagues, employees, as if their work matters at a much more fundamental level than just simply pays the bills. Because, if you're really tough-minded and don't take that seriously, you go, okay, well, this person's going to lose their job, but there's always, supplementary benefits, and there's always, redundancy pay and all that. That's all fine. Actually, psychologically, that's a really naive thought. Work matters much more fundamentally than that. When you go out and you're having a drink with your mates in the pub, pretty soon, if you meet a stranger, someone's going to say, "What do you do?" Well, right now I'm redundant, or right now I don't do anything, or I used to do such and no, that's not what I'm asking. What do you do now? And respect comes also in that way. You do that, do you? Oh, I see. That's right. And I think that this notion of work mattering and trust mattering in the psychological contract both need to be taken much more seriously.
I think that work matters is a great phrase, and I think it also buys into people's identity. If my identity is, identity and responsibility, if I am the main breadwinner, if I am bringing in the bulk of the money into a situation where with housing prices as they are, our position might be a little bit precarious. Maybe we've just bought a new house, maybe we're whatever. And actually, if you take that away from me, then yes, there's my own self-worth as somebody that has work as focus, but then there's my identity maybe as the lead breadwinner or the person who's owning that responsibility. So people's fear really starts to come in there. So there's a lot of things that I think you're right. That just getting an email after a decade that says, "Hey, you're done," that must be, for some people, that could be quite terrifying.
And it happens to very senior people. We have a friend who was fired by email. And he was a partner in a very big, major, household name organisation, and he'd been there for ages and did a really good job. But someone thought not good enough, and took him out. It's been a hell of a shock. But to speak entirely personally, I decided at one point earlier in my life that I was going to retire. And exactly a week later, having left the organisation that I founded with my wife, my younger daughter got married. And on the wedding certificate, Dad had to sign, and it said occupation. It didn't say profession, it said occupation, which means what do you do? And so I found myself starting that with an R. Retired business psychologist. And at that point, literally 1 week afterwards, I realised I wasn't done. And I'm still working now because I'm not done. and my identity did not identify with retired. So I had to do something about it. Work matters.
Well, on that note, bring this conversation to a close. Always a pleasure, always a privilege. Stay on the line, and thank you so much, David.
Thanks a lot.
That's it, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share so others get to hear about us, and subscribe so you keep up to date on new episodes. Also visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with me and find out more about executive coaching, team effectiveness and changing culture. Oh, and of course you can buy my book Living Brave Leadership on Amazon. So on that note, see you soon.